Etienne is one of the creators of the Remind Me Cares concept and tool, and he's a usability professional and consultant in human-computer interaction. He has extensive experience in the delivery of commercial products for multinational customers. Etienne brings to the formal skills of identifying user populations, documenting their specific needs, and through iterative design, addressing the end user's requirement. I think this last sentence is really vital for our audiences. Etienne makes things that really work and which are addictively easy to use.
Thank you. I didn't write that. So I'm here to talk about a piece of software called Remi, which we have built in order to help people with dementia. Dementia is characterized by deficits in memory, but that's also, importantly, it's characterized in issues with communication. And so I think in keeping with the two speakers before me, they've kind of addressed areas of individuals with isolation, feeling loneliness, the impacts on well-being, and eventually, impacts on cognitive decline that are associated with that. And so we've tried to develop a tool which will help people communicate. It's not a tool for, it's not a replacement for good care. It's not something you kind of sit somebody in front of a TV screen and let them while away the day. It's a tool for 2 or more people, groups, or at least 2 people, to have a stimulus which supports conversation, but also drives a better understanding of who that individual is. So I'm not going to refer too much to these slides. This one's quite useful, I suppose. So I'm going to try and keep to 15 minutes. What we do when we register people is we ask them their mother tongue, their gender, and the decade when they were born. And that's really all we care about, because the rest of it they will either tell us, or we'll put content in front of them and they will decide whether it's relevant or not. It's really about them being at the center of this relationship. They have to be, they're the arbiters of what relevance and meaningfulness is for them. So what this is really saying is, you put some words in, there's some things that Remi knows about you already. It might know that where you were born, or it might know that it's building search queries, and there's some intelligence in there, but really where we're doing difficult things like trying to establish if something's meaningful to you, we put the other person decides. So we take words and those become nuggets, and we search with those, and we give people the opportunity to collect things. So in the preparatory work for this, we spent a lot of time with people living with dementia in the community, and also care homes. And what we found was there's a lot of informal use of iPads. There's a lot of informal use of things like Google Images or YouTube, which makes a lot of sense. But very rarely is that stuff stored against an individual's profile, which means that it kind of ends up being anecdotal. And that's a real shame because of the turnover of staff in places like care homes, which means that information or that knowledge is lost. So, we put an interface on the front of that, and we help people find it. And then really the controls are just, you either like something or you bin it. If you bin it, we'll never show you again. You might flag it as something inappropriate, at which point we'll get an editorial team to say, is that really inappropriate for everyone, or is that just for the individual? We want notes. We want spoken notes and written notes, and then we'll show you more like this if there's an area that you want to go and explore. And then we try and build on top of that a means for informal and formal carers to communicate with each other. So I wanted to okay, this one is interesting in that, dementia, I talked about dementia initially. We've designed this thing for dementia. We also use it for people who are recovering from cognitive impairment, and looked after children, because this idea of reminiscence or life story comes initially from children who were taken into care, and it's been taken over by older people, quite rightly, because we all got memories, and we all have a need to revisit those for our own well-being and knowledge of self. But this slide really shows how there's a progression of we've built this tool so that it progresses with you, and you can dip in at any time and start. But the earlier and the more an individual is involved firsthand in putting this information, the more valuable it is. I mention that because it's important that the material that you put into the system belongs to the individual. It doesn't belong to the organisation you might be affiliated with at the time. There was another point now. All right. I'd like to just show you it, actually, if I can, quickly. So, let's see if I can do that unrehearsed. So, Remi.care is the URL.
If you open another tab,
yeah. Cool. Thank you. Let's see. I'm on So this is our Italian connection here. Is that we've been there's a really forward-thinking group of care homes outside of Florence that picked this up very early and are using this. They won a national prize about 2 weeks ago for novel technology in dementia care using this tool. And so the reason why, I'll show you this. So you've seen interfaces which organise. You've seen tools like this before, I hope. So the really important thing is we do group activities and we do one-to-one activities. And the group activities are really about finding commonality in people's experience. Yeah. So there is a need for commonality between people in a care home. You'll see lots of relationships in care home that are very, very close, but people there'll be people in those rooms that have never spoken to each other in years. So it's quite very cliquey, actually. And if you expose people to cultural memory, their background, the tool, when we go into care homes, a lot of the time they say the main use of this thing is going to be to build relationships between our residents. So group activities do that, and we pre-purpose group activities for people. But I'll show you residents very briefly. So people have an area where there's my story. They have a care circle of formal and informal care, as I mentioned. They get the opportunity to talk to each other. Nothing that's kind of used or written in this system is assumed to be private. It's assumed to be available to everybody, but you can make anything private if you need to. But the reason why I just wanted to show you briefly this idea of my story. So this person will have, they will have a very quick snapshot of an individual, and that's useful, and it's used really in terms of building a relationship with somebody quickly. So you don't, a lot of time in care homes, they'll be really conscious of building up information about the care needs in terms of that individual's medical needs, but they don't know who the person is. And they certainly don't know who the person is if they're new or there's a turnover of staff, right? So this is a mechanism very quickly to forge a conversation and to build a relationship, right? And then between people, the system is able to see overlaps in what people's background, what their cultural knowledge is. So any one of these you can upload your own images, and they'll sit alongside the images that you find either on in Google or in YouTube. And we will. I built this thing essentially because my grandma is French, and when she developed dementia, I grew up learning French. I could speak the language, but I had none of the cultural references. I was a Londoner. And when she developed dementia, I realised that the level of our conversation was really around, have you had a drink? Do you want another cup of tea? It was difficult to get past that. But when I looked and searched with her on a computer to find things that were culturally relevant to her when she was a young woman, our conversation was night and day. It's completely different. So this tool will do that. It will help you explore areas of cultural relevance to the individual. Yeah? And you do that through, we either look up YouTube, and we do that primarily for music, if I'm honest. We'll search for anything. But there's such a prevalence of Minecraft on the YouTube and the web that we kind of advise people to look for music, but we could look together for should we look together for movies? Yeah, let's do that. So tell me about a movie that someone might enjoy. So Bicycle Thief, how do I spell that in Italian? Or another one?
I think we need to have Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not personal, right? Okay.
Not personal.
No, it isn't.
Okay, cool. And so we could. When I was listening, I heard a lot of stuff around this idea of supporting or guiding conversations, and so when our primary focus for this are the care to give somebody a focus, something to respond to. Yeah. So we get it wrong a lot of the time. This lady is going to give us
at least 28 million copies having been published in the...
So she is going to review it for us. I'm going to bin it, all right? And
Don't be bashful, gentlemen. $20.
I'm in an exploring mode, so I'm finding stuff that's relevant for us. Yeah?
$25 for Miss
I like that.
Only $25?
It's a minute and a half. We're dealing with people with relatively short attention spans, so that's good information to know.
Well, I really can't go on getting
I like clips are good, right? So we'll store clips.
I never give it.
Don't you want to marry me?
I'm doing
Okay, so we could do this, and then what I've got against an individual is clips that we can revisit. At the same time, I can we can change direction. I can go off and we can change those search terms, and we'll use the web to suggest some things that are potentially relevant. But really what we're doing is we're illustrating what the individual is talking about, which is exactly what you were talking about. But we're doing it in a way that their families can then engage in remotely, and in a way that's stored against them. And really what Remi does the rest of the time is build tools around building a community of people who are trusted around building that knowledge and that activity. Essentially, it's not trying to do anything particularly ambitious. It's really making available the tools that we take for granted for those individuals. Yeah. What do you think? Well, should we Gone with the Wind? Do we want specifics about that, or shall we move on to a different movie? I think you've got the concept, right? So you've got it. I will. I'll get back. So we spent a couple of minutes on that, and what we've got for the individual is an album of that they can return to, that they can share, they can write notes. Record notes is really important to us because we don't want people typing a lot of the time we want them talking. And I think when we use this in practice, the most important thing is actually when this thing is paused. Because when it's paused, then that's when the individual is usually talking, and that's when we're learning about them. That's when the person talking to them, that's when they're being listened to, I suppose, is the most important part of it, which doesn't happen a lot, nearly enough, in most people's lives, but specifically, in the care environment. And so this is really, essentially, this is what Remi is.